football teams I visited, such as Henichesk, for some of those beautiful pink lakes that they've got down there near the Crimean Peninsula, Oleshki Sands, which is also in Kherson. It was a very eye-opening experience to see how, despite the sort of rumors that people try and make out that Ukraine was very much a divided country and all this kind of stuff, that's very much rubbish. There is always continuity across Ukraine. One thing I certainly want to mention is that the infrastructure and all this kind of stuff before the war began was very much improving, and Ukraine was in a good position. It was going up slowly, of course, but since 2014, a rebuild was slowly picking up, and sadly, the current events that have happened over the past few weeks, especially with the indiscriminate shelling and the kind of
Hello, everybody. This is the American Dufus Show. Don't be a doofus. We were listening in on a briefing taking place among international journalists that are sharing their stories. I want to thank you all for joining. As always, it is the American Dufus Show. Don't be a doofus. I want to begin. Those that watch the show know that I've reached out to a few people I've been communicating with and inviting people onto the show. And I want to share this real quick to begin the show. Thank you for your human interest and your kind words. Unfortunately, I cannot join your program as all my time and efforts are dedicated to protecting my people and my family. For example, a few days ago, Russian officers killed my younger brother, a civilian. He just crossed the street to buy food. My friends, 2 young women, tortured, raped, and killed. One of them was a brilliant doctor. Another one was a scientist and had a PhD. 14 days as my morning starts, not from coffee and Shakespearean poetry, not from an amazing song by the Beatles, but from dead bodies of our children and our people around our streets. Please share this as opposed to me coming on your program. So, a little bit of a direct message, if you will, from someone who's there and I don't know. It's going to get worse before it gets better. I wish I could say that I had any kind of doubt about that, but I don't. It's going to get worse before it gets better. We start today with our Google map, but instead of Ukraine, I'm starting today with Russia, and Russia's so big that I'm going to have to pull out here a bit, just to give you an idea of the scope of the size of Russia. Okay, and not just to give you an idea of the size, but I have a specific reason for starting out here as well. Russia is massive. Russia goes up to the North Pole almost. And this is Ukraine. Now, here's Japan, and there are these little tiny islands. Japan has claimed them from Russia. Russia has ports, obviously, throughout the Bering Sea. And just so you see how far Russia really is, if Sarah Palin lived here on this very tip, she might have been able to see Russia from her house, as she claimed, because this is Alaska. That is the distance between the United States and Russia. Again, most of you probably are aware of all this stuff. This is just for those that may not know. Russia has ports all through here, but this is all cold water. Okay. Russia doesn't have warm water access anymore. That's a reason that Ukraine is a strategic objective, because right now they just have Crimea, and if we look at battlefield strategy, this is the Ukrainian border. Russia here, Russia down here, Russia comes in here, up here, tries to cut this way, to if nothing else control the area. They already have the Donbass over here, they have Crimea here. And we're just talking strategy, war strategy. Cut this area off here so that there is always access to warm water through the Black Sea, as long as relations with Turkey are upheld, as Turkey basically controls who gets into the Black Sea, or can control who gets into the Black Sea. And this, if an agreement were reached to give Russia this area, it would landlock basically whatever was left of Ukraine. I also want to share this. As I said last night, I'd come better prepared today. Anyone that wants to donate, this is a site that the money goes basically directly to Ukraine. It is a non-GO associated with the Ukrainian government. This site is Come Back Alive, all one word, COMEBACKALIVE.IN.UA. And it gives you, go to this site if you're interested and you consider donating. I want to point out, if anyone has an objection, that assistance does go to their soldiers. Okay. And also, if I remember right, when you click the donate button, make sure you're transferring it into Ukrainian money, not sending US money, because you'll end up not sending them as much as you intend to. And again, those are just if anyone is interested. Again, it's Come Back Alive, all one word, .in.ua. So let's get to the stories. Actually, let's get to a quick look at Flight Tracker. Earlier, there was some discussion if we might, as if there was a plane, and there was some discussion as if if there were possibilities that was the Patriot missiles being flown in. And that's one of our stories for today. It doesn't appear. Okay. I don't see anything really out of the ordinary at the moment. There was some talk whether we would be able to track the vice president's plane, and that was not going to be the case. This is the latest news. Ukrainian's foreign minister has just arrived in Turkey to meet with Russia's Sergei Lavrov. We've shown Sergei Lavrov on here numerous times. I will not be surprised if Russians suggest serious concessions to Ukraine, given their very complicated situation in war. I'm going to have to disagree with that analysis. I don't think there will be anything come out of this other than a repeat to Ukraine that you've got to stop the fighting. You've got to make sure you never, ever consider joining NATO. I don't think there'll be major concessions. I'd love to be wrong, because it would mean that Putin is considering the fact that he seems to be getting his butt handed to him by Ukrainians, and becoming the butt of jokes based on John Deere tractors. Okay, we're going to start out with just a brief video, otherwise known as how to take the detonator out of a Russian bomb. Incredible. And you can hear shelling in the background. That's from Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, by the way. All right. Come on. U.S. officials are concerned Russia could be preparing chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine after the Russian defense said Ukraine may be planning a false flag chemical weapon attack. And that comes from the NBC reporter, Ken Dillian. So we talked about it last night. This looks like the cargo section for an Icelander M9M723 ballistic missile carrying cluster munitions. I wanted to show you the up close, and then wait a minute. I've got the actual video here of them finding it, but the diagram here shows this compartment. The diagram shows this compartment right here, and cluster bombs are outlawed in this brief video. You're asking yourself maybe, what's the significance of all this? It's a ballistic missile. It is a ballistic missile with several thousand kilometer range. And it's one of the first actual documented occurrences where there is evidence that Russia has indeed been firing ballistic missiles. So it's got some significance. And again, we're showing in detail for those that watch the show that can indeed verify the significance. The Dow jumps 800 points as oil prices plummet. That's fairly breaking news, comes in just over an hour ago. This is the jet of the future. This is the United States Air Force fighter-like autonomous jet. It's going to provide adversary air support. This supplier will be the startup Blue Force Technologies, and this is the size of a T-38 Bandit. And again, this is from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I'm going to save that for tonight. The biggest news of the day, and I haven't even mentioned it yet because mainstream has just been flooded with it. I've got some footage that I don't know if it's been on mainstream yet, and I'm not sure if I'm going to study or if I'm going to share it. I am going to study it. the bombing of the hospital in Mariupol, and I do have some footage I know I'm going to share, at least a picture I know I'm going to share. This post indicates that Russia had been planning on the bombing of the hospital for a long time. This is basically propaganda that the neo-Nazis had established strong points in maternity hospitals, and that was the preface for blowing up all those women and children today. Plane carrying former President Donald Trump made an emergency landing. We just learned about this, but it happened Saturday after engine failure over the Gulf of Mexico. So for those of you that were praying for such a thing, you know, maybe stop praying too soon. I'm not one of them. I'd rather see him in jail. Sorry, that's a personal statement and not news. A senior officer of the Ukrainian army addresses his cousin, who's a Russian minister of parliament. And he asks, when did you sell your soul? Your parents lay next to mine. They must be rolling in their coffins knowing what you do. This is the interpretation of the video. Well, let me just let you read along here with me. These are real intercepted calls. Russian soldiers in Ukraine call their close ones back in Russia to tell how it is going so far. The looting and war crimes included. And again, please share. We are. The world must know the truth of what they're doing to our homes and our people. Let me bring it down just a little bit so I can get the entire thing in screen. And
Куда ездил?
Мародерить ездил.
Зачем магазин воровал?
Ходили маленько, помародерничали, блядь.
Нихуя надо, не маленько, а по полной, блядь.
Вчера машину расстрелял.
Ты?
Да.
А хули делать? Стреляй на срань, блядь, чтобы не в тебя ебать их урод, блядь, теперь. Тебя же наркоманы и нацисты ебаные. Куда?
Мародерить. Это же поселок Верховной Рады.
Так.
И теперь у тебя есть 2 норковых манто.
okay, just in case there's confusion, these are the men talking, and these are their significant others back home. The words you see up here, the translation you see up here.
Наши есть этот самый мутоновый полушубок исконный. Дом один взяли, под свой контроль. Нас, блядь, 20 человек в одном доме живет. А я, блядь, спил за 7 тысяч. Упакова не будет?
Не будет.
Охуеть, ебать. Ну ладно, привезу хотя бы телек за 70 тысяч.
Он большой?
Да.
А вам разрешат его вообще вести?
Да.
Почему вам это разрешают?
Потому что они сами это набрали. А еще у меня есть метабовский станок, о котором я мечтал давно, пильный. Сварить.
Мой.
И 2 ямаховские колонки, как у Никитина, каждая, которая по 100 тысяч стоит. Сварочник новый, в ящике, там, мясорубка на дачу новая, блин.
Это только ты собрал все это?
Ну, мы с князем ездили вчера вдвоем.
Вчера у нас вот тоже, короче, просто какие-то 3 типа вышли прям на нас. Мы их держали, раздели догола, смотрели всю одежду. Ну и потом принимаете решение, отпускать их или нет, потому что если их отпустить, они могут наши позиции сдать. И тогда нас всех порешает артиллерия, всех. Ну и приняли решение просто решили застрелить.
Сереж, чтобы потом не говорили, что ты там...
Just giving you something to think about. The Kremlin is doing everything it can to control the narrative about what is happening in Ukraine. Our report from Moscow on the day McDonald's and Coca-Cola suspended its business in Russia. I want to play this for you because it's from the BBC, and it's one of the only Western correspondents that has
soldiers and officers
that has stayed. And Again, this is from the BBC, and we're going to play it in its entirety.
Women's Day. It's one of Russians' favourite holidays, but this year's felt subdued and tense. Moscow police out in force to prevent protests at what Russia's doing in Ukraine. And from the Kremlin, a request for Russian women to support the offensive.
I want to say this to mothers, wives, sisters and girlfriends of our soldiers and officers in battle who are defending Russia in this special military operation. I understand how worried you must be about your loved ones. You should be proud of them, like the whole country is.
What the whole country isn't is fully behind the Kremlin's decision to send in the troops. This was St. Petersburg on Women's Day. The sign says, "Stop sending our soldiers to their deaths." Many Russians, though, do believe the Kremlin line, that this is not a war, but an operation to protect Russia. I asked Anna and Olga, how much do they support Putin? 100%. No, 200%, she says. He's doing the right thing. And that's what we've told our children. That is exactly what Vladimir Putin wants the public to think.
The Kremlin is doing everything it can at home to control the narrative about what's happening in Ukraine. Virtually all independent Russian news outlets have been either blocked or shut down. And the new law has made it a criminal offence to spread what the authorities deem to be fake news about the Russian armed forces, punishable by up to 15 years in prison.
Controlling the narrative becomes harder when multinationals like McDonald's are suspending operations. The fast food giant employs 62,000 staff here. Bowing to international pressure, it's temporarily closing all its restaurants in Russia. Maria Baronova fears for Russia's future. She's left state broadcaster RT in protest to what Russia's doing in Ukraine.
Yeah, now Russian economy is dead. That's the end. It's like the death of your very close relative. Now, there was a big love of my life, Russia, and now it is dead as well.
On this special day, no celebration. Instead, concern over what most of the world calls a war and what the Kremlin calls an operation. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News.
Great report. And hopefully he is able to stay there and be one of the few voices coming out. Sorry about this. In news here in the United States, Colorado County elections official Tina Peters indicted in probe of alleging tampering with her county voter records. Actually, there have been 17 counts leveled against her and her aide. Over a day, Ukraine managed to evacuate 40,000 women and children from areas of combat operations in different parts of the country, including more than 3,000 from occupied Ypres and Vorzel. We talked about Ypres yesterday, about how approximately 30% of it was under Russian control. And this was as of yesterday. So things have probably changed. By the way, the very disturbing phone conversations that were shared, many of those came from that Ypres area. The letter I began this show with, the person is in the Ypres area. Now, while a lot of 40,000, that's huge, that's massive, that's great. This is Ypres, and just so we're clear that at the same time there was a ceasefire, there was also a bombing of a children's hospital. Okay, down here is Mariupol right here, and Kiev's up here. This is where the hospital was bombed. If we zoom in just a little bit, one more. Here's the Ypres area just outside of Kiev. And just to give you an idea, right here, Kiev and the Ypres area. And then Mariupol down here, right on the coast. This is where the hospital was bombed. Again, Russia is trying to establish control of the area down here. Primarily, if there is an objective, it is to have a warm water port once again, as the Soviet Union had. Russia disrupts the civilian evacuation from the Kiev region. Officials agree on the humanitarian corridor, but according to local authorities, they blocked the passage of 50 bus convoys once they got outside of the region. They have been preaching for opening corridors to allow. They've been proposing opening corridors to allow people to flee from Kiev, from Sumy, and from Kharkiv. But the corridors all lead either into Belarus or into Russia, and basically into internment camps. Imagine somebody's trying to occupy your territory, and the only freedom, the only option you have is to go and give up your freedom by basically going into the territory of the occupier. Those are the alternatives Ukrainians are faced with. It can't get west. Now, so far, Lviv, nothing has happened over here in Lviv. Again, we talked about Odessa last night. And I bring up Odessa because our next story is from Jack Dersh, who is national security reporter from the Pentagon. The U.S. sees no evidence of imminent amphibious assault on Odessa. We told you that last night, that our information from the ground was that the Russian warships had pulled back from the coast of Ukraine and were actually heading back to their port in Crimea. And Russia will send information on coming provocations with chemical weapons in Ukraine. This is from the Russian envoy. So again, elevate, escalate, chemical, biological. If those don't do the trick, then nuclear. I see no way Putin can emerge from this war in anything but a radically worse position. If he pulls the trigger first and he bombs literally everybody else and nobody fires back, he can be in a much better position. So this guy's thinking conventionally, and we need to start thinking about the unthinkable. And we always have to remind ourselves that the longer this goes, the more desperate the president of Russia is going to be. I mean, right now, from all reports, basically for the past 2 months, he has been in a bunker, living in a bubble with little to no access from anybody out on the outside, because he too fears a coup. He too fears that he's going to be taken out of office. He's also very paranoid of COVID, and as we've reported in the past, there have been numerous reports that he has Parkinson's disease as well as a terminal cancer diagnosis. So you put all those things together, and you'll hear, for lack of a better term, former military people on various social or various mainstream media platforms still talking about dealing with things the way they've always been dealt with in the past. And while we have our perceptions of whether things are escalatory or not, the concept of distributing planes has become an overriding point to what should have been a behind the scenes transfer, and the only time anybody said anything about it was after the fact, when people were trying to figure out who gave who to what. And instead, I don't know if they considered it, a bluff, if they were trying to trying to scare Putin that this might happen, so they perceive as if it is going to happen and then pull back. There are those that are saying, well, if we send in planes, if we sent, here's what they've said exactly. If we sent Patriot missile batteries actually into Ukraine, it would not be escalatory. If we send a plane in, it will be. It might be to us, but to Putin, he announced earlier today that the United States has declared economic war on Russia. We just played clips showing you how the Russian people feel and what the Russian people are thinking. It's time that somebody in power in the United States started going, hey, we got to do something. This is not Vladimir Putin from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. This is a totally different beast. F-35B Lightning aircraft. This is from the Royal Air Force from the United Kingdom. They've landed, and they are in Estonia. We have F-35s, and we have Black Hawk helicopters. Actually tracked some Black Hawk helicopters earlier on the radar. And so we are tightening the defenses, and we continue to see Russia may not be the huge power that we've always thought they are. Democrats generally come to a gunfight with a strongly worded piece of paper, and we already know false flags. We know potential chemical, potential biological. And it is frustrating to many of us that the United States cannot act. Because if we're as good as we say we are, then from what we've been seeing, it doesn't seem like there would be a whole lot of competition. But then again, we're not in Afghanistan because we got beat by, as some say, a bunch of guys wearing pajamas and flip-flops. So this is a worrying development outside of Kharkiv. Again, this just reiterates what we've been talking about. The Russian Defense Ministry has said that it tracked Ukrainian nationalists bringing in 80 tons of ammonia. Moscow says they're preparing to frame Russia for a chemical weapons attack. So all of this is just getting much too coincidental. And I don't know if you'll hear about any of this on mainstream media, but just you guys know. And thank y'all for watching, as always. Where am I? Okay? I'm still back on the map. Hello to everybody watching. I don't have the chat up at the moment. Thank you all for watching. I apologize for that. And let me go back and show you what I've been talking about. I'm operating on one computer at the moment. Okay. The other computer's been down for several months, as you know. I don't have a monitor at the moment. So I get carried away and talking about things that I'm not showing you. And honestly, the only thing that you would have seen would be the actual F-35B Lightning aircraft, pretty impressive fighting machine that Britain is sending to Estonia to aid in the eastern defense of NATO. Again, we talked about the war crime, or about the 80 tons of ammonia supposedly going to be set off and then blamed. The Russian nationalists are going to set it off and then blame it on Russia. So, or the Ukrainian nationalists are going to set it off and blame it on Russia. 80 tons of ammonia, ammonium nitrate bombs. The most famous, Oklahoma City. That's what was used there to destroy the government building by Timothy McVeigh. This is a man down inside the crater of the bomb that hit the Mariupol hospital. It is a 1,000 kilogram air bomb. It hit between the hospital and the birthing center in the middle of this complex. And that just gives you, this is the crater left. So the devastation outward. And this was a conventional bomb. I make that distinction because the Russian military Minister of Defense has confirmed that they have used TOS-1A weapon systems, thermobaric rockets, and of course we reported on that about a week ago, and a lot of people said, "Oh, that's silly." That's, you know, had one person laugh at me. But now we have confirmed, and we don't get much more confirmed than the Russian Minister of Defense. I'm not sure why he would admit to that, because it's war crimes, but everything they've been doing is a war crime. So the mayor of Kherson says Russians have provided the only green corridor to the city, but it's to occupied Crimea. And we were talking about that earlier, that the only way they're allowing people to truly safely evacuate, because they've been attacking they've broken all the other ceasefires. But to 200 foreigners have been able to be evacuated, and but most of the Ukrainian citizens do not want to go into a Russian gulag, basically. This is a little more in depth on Tina Peters and her deputy. I said 17 counts earlier. I think I apologize for that. That was wrong. It's only 11. Kremlin says Putin ordered conscripts. Now this is an important little tiny bit of information that that may not get out. You may only learn of the consequences of this as opposed to how it actually starts. And it's from TASS, Russian news agency. The Kremlin says Putin ordered conscripts to be excluded from Ukraine operations and is now asking military prosecutors to find and punish those who allowed conscripts to go to Ukraine. A conscript is like being drafted. Okay, you're not voluntarily fighting for your country. You've been drafted, and basically you're being forced to fight or coerced to fight for your country. So Putin had ordered that nobody go into Ukraine that wasn't a trained soldier, that wasn't a volunteer and a committed member of the military, because when you're drafted, you don't take it quite as seriously as those who volunteer. An NFL football coach was talking about one of his players who said he didn't want to be there anymore, and he traded him. And they asked why, and he said, "I'd rather play with volunteers than hostages." And the same is true here. Some of these conscripts, a lot of them gave up the first chance they got. For those wondering how many prisoners, how did Ukraine have so many prisoners of war? A lot of them just didn't want to be there. They fight. They were forced into service. A lot of them probably had the option. They committed a petty crime, and they had the option of joining the armed forces or going to prison for an incredibly long amount of time. For those who thought it would just be limited to me, the Z thing, maybe I was talking about it before anybody else, but just watch. This sign kind of says it all. This kind, the simple, keep it simple, stupid. The KISS method. I hope that comes down. If Russia stops fighting, there will be no war. If Ukraine stops fighting, there will be no Ukraine. That's why I say this is not going to end good. This is not going to end pretty. And the longer we let it go, I know Democrats are trying to avoid election disasters. Well, grow some cojones and prove to the American people that yeah, I'm not going to go down. I'm not going to go on that tangent at this time. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vidman rips into Marjorie Taylor Greene for blaming Russia's invasion of Ukraine on Biden. Again, she's one of the Trumput-anons, that a new term I just coined, and feel free to hashtag it and lead it back to here. No, Putin invaded Ukraine because you and your pro-Putin party encouraged Putin to invade by cheerleading him. Worse yet, you undermined President Biden's efforts to deter the war by signaling punishing costs. You have blood on your hands the American people will not forget. His words, not mine, as obvious by the quote and end quote American people, you're giving American people too much credit. A lot of them have already forgotten. Syrian war escalating, more probes needed into civilian casualties, according to UN experts. This is important because, again, a world war is not fought in a single country. So those that this, if anything, is the prelude to World War III, and hopefully this that is not the case, but that's where we're at. We're in a prelude position. A world war has not fully begun, at least not operationally. Britain's also sending the most advanced anti-aircraft missile system in the world to Ukraine. Ben Wallace told Parliament Britain will supply Starstreak high-velocity missile systems to bolster the fight against Russia. Again, there is apparently in the minds of the NATO leaders, there is a difference between sending systems like this in and our Patriot missile system, ours meaning United States, and actually sending non-high tech. I mean, the MiGs that Poland are talking about giving up. We showed you the cockpits last night of the two planes. I don't know. I think maybe NATO's putting way too much value on how important aircraft might be, as far as a pawn in escalating, as a chip or a chip in escalating. Just something to think about. And this comes from Truth. For those that don't know, Donald Trump opened his own version of Twitter, basically, and it's called Truth. So far, he hasn't used it, but of course, he's been scared poo-poo-less by an airplane whose engine suddenly stopped. And again, those of you praying for that, you stopped too early. I'm not one of them because I want to see him in jail. Here's what they say. Welcome to the Truth support page. Remember the first rule of propaganda? Tell a lie so big that it becomes truth. All right. Basically, this thing's riddled with bugs, and it's dropped from, it was the #1 download. And I think it's dropped down to, like, I don't know, 74th or, somewhere just below triple digits. And speaking of the former president, just a reminder of the length of connection, once again, between President Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, who promises the world's most beautiful women to Putin. This comes from 2013. I was going to read this in my Trump impersonation voice, but it's too serious. The ties are a lot deeper than a lot of American people go and know, and how far they go. Why would he put the world's most beautiful women? The last paragraph I will read, but not in his voice. I'll try not to anyway. I want to take this opportunity to invite you to be my guest of honor in Moscow on November 9th. I know you'll have a great time. With best wishes. On the surface, why is Trump running a Miss Universe pageant? But and again, this came out of Newsweek 4 hours ago. It's what I was telling you about, that Russian forces opened fire on Ukraine civilians being evacuated. They haven't honored a no-fly zone yet, or a ceasefire yet, except for to take 200 foreigners into Crimea, Russian-held territory. Basically, they got 40,000 people out today, but they didn't get them out of Ukraine. They got them out of inner cities into centralized parts of Ukraine. You know, they still got to safely get them to the western part of Ukraine and through the Polish border. And speaking of the Polish border, I was talking with someone earlier today, and they asked me to share this. They had just taken some people to the border, and there were two lines. There's a line, long lines. There were two lines. A long line leaving Ukraine, and that was made up of women and kids and the elderly. And there was a long line on the other side of the border that was all men. And they were Ukrainians coming from all over the world, returning home to fight, as well as foreign fighters. So just kind of visualize that, if you would. And I said last night, I don't know, you know, I was going to ask, is there a red line? I said last night, I don't know if there is a red line, short of United States soil being attacked. And thankfully, I'm not the one that has to make that decision, because at some point, I've already said, I said it from before Putin declared this, he'll go nuclear. And hopefully it's not long-range ballistic missile nuclear attack the United States, but he's going to do something. And is that going to be the red line? Because I don't think a plane getting shot down would be the red line. At the moment, we're not even willing to risk a plane getting shot down. There are those that think that is awesome and the way to go. And I'm starting to lean on the side of, let's call this sucker's bluff. And, you know, we may not be able to take him out. He may be so well entrenched in a bunker that we may not be able to get to him personally, but we might be able to get to enough of the leaders to neuter him. I don't know, but if there are those that do know, they should be, and I hope they are, being more vocal behind the scenes, not on social media, you know, not coming out and telling us this stuff. But you have to ask yourself as a human being, when you stand up and stop this for the good of humanity, and those of us that love peace and want peace, it doesn't mean push comes to shove, we're not gonna fight. Matter of fact, an interesting thing was brought up in one of the conversations I had late last night, was that most of the Americans that are going over there as foreign fighters are actually centrist or left leaning. None of the far right militia are going, which just something to think about. The U.S. has placed ballistic missile. This is one of those, again, one of those little nuggets that you may not catch anybody else talking about. The U.S. has placed ballistic missile defense systems near South Korea and Japan at an enhanced readiness due to continuous ballistic missile launches by North Korea and activities near the Korean Peninsula will increase. So we have to, again, I just keep reminding with all these little things that there are potential hotspots all around the world. At the moment, we're not in World War III, and hopefully we never get there. But it's not going to be one in one country. Okay, by definition, it's not in one country. 13 hours ago, a huge convoy of Russian hardware on the move from Kherson, and I got footage of that, but it's not verified yet. So come back tonight at 11 o'clock. We'll have footage of that caravan. I want to bring this up because I take a lot of shots at times. And I want to point out when they deserve kudos. And Fox News Foreign Affairs correspondent Benjamin Hall took a moment to rebuke his colleagues, basically Sean Hannity, Bowtie, and Little House on the Prairie girl. What's her name? Laura Ingraham. Wasn't that Little House on the Prairie girl? He's the latest Fox reporter to speak out against the network's coverage of Ukraine. So, of course, he's on the ground and he sees what's going on. He's not a gas bag sitting behind a desk in Washington, which I am a gas bag sitting behind a TV tray, but not in Washington. Mitch McConnell blocks extending child nutrition waivers that made school lunches free during the pandemic. Quote, it hurts everybody in every state. These are the things Republicans want, end quote. Here's a look inside an airport in Romania, packed with Ukrainian refugees. And the British reporter notes that they're taking flights to Bucharest, to Dublin, to Vienna, to Warsaw. The only flight not full with Ukrainians is the one to London, London Luton Airport, because they wouldn't be allowed on without visas. Feels quite shameful as a Brit. If something were to happen and you had to evacuate the United States, do you even have a passport? Could you evacuate the United States? Could you leave the border if you had to? A lot of Ukrainians in the same position. Again, this is some independent footage of the scene in Mariupol this morning. You see it dropped in the center and destroyed all the surrounding buildings. 1,000 kiloton bomb. One bomb, you heard him say. Okay. I want to show this just for a second. Pardon me. Here's a shipment of the NLAW grenade launchers. They're actually single fire shoulder missile one shots. And then you discard the carriage. It says instructors from NATO arrived in Kharkiv, the most farthest eastern city of Ukraine. Shipment of NLAW grenade launchers and instructors from NATO. So I think these are there. You can see their faces have been blacked out with a Sharpie. I think these might be American CIA agents. It's just a possibility as part of NATO, but they're in Kharkiv. Again, the farthest eastern city, 12 miles from the Russian border, and it's NATO. So NATO is in Ukraine, according to Nexta, which is a very viable middle European news organization. Just something to think about. All the political things that we're getting caught up in when we could possibly be having a major advantage and destroying any future idea that Russia could ever be a superpower again. We're doing so economically, but will that be enough? Time will tell. I showed yesterday, or last night, really, I showed a picture, and this comes from yesterday as well. And I had footage of a convoy that had all these different kinds of vehicles on like this, this is an ice cream truck. Of course, here's those looking for Z's. There's your Z's. But again, I don't think this is some kind of ploy. I'm going to talk to a couple of military people here later on today and tonight, and hopefully have an answer before the 11 o'clock show. But I don't think this is a ploy. I don't think Russia's using this. I think they might be running out of equipment. It's, again, if this is a giant paper tiger, okay, this came from the United States Embassy in Kiev. I got it just after I went off the air last night. U.S. citizens should depart Ukraine immediately if it is safe using ground transportation. They should not travel to Ukraine due to the active armed conflict, and they should monitor government notices and media for changes in security conditions and alerts to shelter in place. So, and this was Senator Rubio, a Republican senator, talking about the biological or chemical weapon possibility, and again reiterating that if there is an attack that is going to be coming from Russia, not coming from Ukraine on itself. And again, this came in front of me last night after I went off. The Philadelphia Police Commissioner announced that she plans to fire the officer who shot and killed 12-year-old Thomas Siderio because the shooting violates the department's use of force directive. I don't know how many people are even aware that this 12-year-old was shot in Philadelphia unless you're in the Philadelphia area. So want to bring a little bit of attention to this. Another police shooting, this time a 12-year-old. However, it is suspected the 12-year-old was armed. Here's a look at the 12-year-old. Police shooting. I don't know. There's a lot about this story. One of which is the police commissioner of Philadelphia's last name is Outlaw, but she's made the decision to utilize the commissioner's direct action to suspend the officer number one. She's not releasing the officers' names or the information she has. So this is something that we're going to have to keep an eye on, as well as everything else that we are watching unfold. Again, police, the commissioner of the police department in Philadelphia is saying that she plans to fire the officer responsible for killing the 12-year-old, and after a 30-day suspension. And we're closing with this tonight. Or this afternoon, rather. I hope. There we go. Our last story of the day. One of the world's best snipers has arrived in Ukraine. He's French Canadian. He's known as Wally, W-A-L-I, from the Royal Canadian 22nd Regiment. He made his reputation during various tours in Afghanistan, Syria, and Iraq. So I don't know. It's kind of the optics of we see foreign fighters coming in groups of 6, 8, 10, and then this one person comes walking down the gantry way and doesn't look very intimidating or assuming at all, and is one of, if not the best killer in the world. Just something to think about. It's the American Doofus Show. Don't be a doofus. I do want to share one more time here. If there is anybody interested in donating, this goes directly to Ukraine. Do some research on it yourself. Don't just, take my word on it. And again, if you're going to donate, do so before you hit send. Convert it to Ukrainian dollars, so that the amount you are intending to send is what they actually get. One quick last look at flightwear. And I was expecting there might be some more security in the sky. Error failed. Okay. I was expecting there might be some more security in the sky with the arrival of the Vice President of the United States, who's going to be visiting here in Poland and in Romania in support of Ukraine. But again, we are having technical difficulties. And yesterday we talked about a lot of the social media pages were having problems with connectivity. Some of them even down for periods. So don't be surprised if that happens. Don't be surprised if you don't see cyber incursions start to rise. But the real thing we need to be looking for is the escalations coming from Russia and blaming Ukraine. Again, always remember that. The hints are already out there. And generally Putin doesn't, generally he does what he says he's going to do. And he's put chemical, biological, and nuclear all on the table. And actually, if you study a little bit of Russian military, they're playbook, if you will, their general modus of operandi, their means of conducting war. They don't have like escalations. Okay, we keep talking about, well, he's going to escalate. They don't look at things that way. All right, they just look at it as there's an objective. We move forward to the objective by any means necessary, and we win. And that's basically Soviet era, current Russian military doctrine. So nothing's off the table. And every morning that I wake up and there hasn't been a biological, chemical, or nuclear incident, I consider it a great day and a great night's sleep. So I will be back at 11 o'clock tonight talking about what's happened between now and then, because it's a constant on all levels. And I thank you all for watching, and we'll be back 11 p.m. tonight. The American Dufus Show. Don't be a doofus.